So today I'm going to work on my favorite part of at least the beginning of creating one of these games, and that is pixel art, because that's really where my adventure with creating any video game comes from. And like pixel art, when you are thinking of the platform that you're working on, then you eventually get a grasp of the limitations of the system. For instance, with the Sega Genesis, you learn that you're dealing with 4 groups of 16 color palettes, with one of those colors reserved for transparency, roughly 15 colors per palette, and 4 different palettes, which gives you a good amount of color. It's 64 colors, but it's more like 60. The transparency is extremely important, though. With the Atari, it's a little different. You have 128 colors, but under normal circumstances, those colors can only be layered as rows. With the other systems, the color count goes up or is approached in different ways. So with the 3 different systems that I programmed for, the Sega Genesis or Sega CD, the Atari 7800 or the Atari 2600, different colors are used. But that doesn't mean you can't, draw whatever you want to. It just means that the more crazy you go with your drawings and the more color you use, the more you may have to adapt that artwork to work on a system. So, for instance, when first learning how to program on the Sega, one of the best, easiest things to do, and this is to learn to deal with the color palette, is to make banners. That's how it is with any tile-based system. So I'll get a folder full of banners and then use a program to turn those banners into pictures that appear on that system. On the Atari 7800, I made banners for Double Dragon. Okay, so I used the Double Dragon title screen, I reduced it, I changed the colors, I redrew it to make a nice picture for the 7800. Let's see, I don't even, 7800 is not even on here. I can't believe it. It should be on here. With Atari, I have these folders that I use, and of course this newest one, Wrestling, I have broken everything up into little chunks of the custom wrestlers. I've come up with, a game plan for how to make several different wrestlers in the game, and I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, I think it'll work out fine. Now for the Sega, using base EGA Azores, I'll go in here and the examples are all different because they're more color. So let's just take into account She-Ra, right? I was watching the series and was really happy with that, and so I decided to draw some She-Ra graphics. So let's look through some of that bitmap art where you'll come up with ideas. So we know we need Adora. So here we have some examples. I started with a 16 color drawing. Everything I do here I use MT Paint, which is a free paint program. And here we go. So I just, I drew Adora from from the new, Netflix She-Ra, which I thought was a great cartoon. I'm not super picky, but I think that if you watch the original She-Ra, it's the same as like Thundercats and Silverhawks and He-Man. The pacing was slow. The way they communicated with each other was very simple and complete and precise and paced slowly enough to where little kids can follow it and adults can follow it. And humor was there, but it was more like, a very evenly paced, simple, I don't know, I guess like a less complex story. It's like, there's a problem, then there's a filler for helping to explain the problem, there's the hero, there's the solution to the problem. And the really common, simple point A to point B pacing of the stories. And in the She-Ra remake, it was a lot more complex. It was a lot less, it was in no way like overly simplified. It was obviously meant for teenager to young adult or adult viewers. I don't think they were thinking this cartoon's going to be watched by 8-year-olds, whereas the original She-Ra was most definitely 8-year-olds are going to be watching this. Little 8-year-old girls are going to be combing the hair of a She-Ra toy and want to see this. But in the case of the Netflix She-Ra, it definitely had strong adult overtones, and the complexity of the story was more in that you would have to be prepared more long-running, complex storylines. So I loved it. I really loved it. I thought that especially like season 3 was incredible. I loved the comedy. It was very comedy-centric writing. Anyway, so what I did with Sega Genesis, and I also did this with Atari and the 7800 to a degree, is I drew a whole bunch of just archetypal characters. I drew like screens of archetypal characters, all using the same 16 color palette. So when you do that, you're like, okay, I've got a ton of characters to pick from, and I know they're all going to fit into that same 16 color palette. Then if I want to make a video game, I grab some of those characters and then I start to draw a new character from them. So I guess how you could put it is, I made actors. Like I've got like, how if you watch movies and you'll see that the same group of actors often appear in the same movies from the same producers, right? Like Quentin Tarantino is a great example. He has a kind of a clique of characters that he used in all of his movies, and you could expect you're going to see Samuel L. Jackson in Quentin Tarantino movies. He's just, he's in them over and over and over again. You're going to see kind of key characters appear in several of his movies, and that's excellent. It's comfortable, I think, is a better way to put it. But then also there are newcomers. They'll pull in some new characters, and he's my favorite director of all time. Like I'll believe that probably forever. I'm not a person that looks at movies, games, TVs, and stuff, and then I am trying to dig into the life of the producers or the creators of them. I don't want to feel guilty in the future when they find out the people who made these movies or shows were monsters. I liked The Cosby Show. Okay, even more to an even larger degree, like Fat Albert. I was a little kid watching Fat Albert. That was a cool cartoon. I liked Picture Pages a lot. I remember being excited and watching Picture Pages and just having a lot of fun with that. And you find out that the guy who did this stuff might have been a terrible monster, or he was a monster, right? And so now all of that work is tainted. You watch that work now thinking, you can't help but think in the background this actor here was an actual legit monster. I think it's a little easier with Weinstein, because he was the producer of these works, but he was not directly involved. You're not seeing him, you know that he's not having a sway over the material to such a degree. And you're going to find out that the people that wrote this stuff, the people that sang, the people that drew it, the people that acted in it, the people that directed all these, they're all monsters. They're just terrible monsters. They're horrible. And so when somebody finds out that this or that show was satanic, oh my goodness, I didn't really realize that. Or you find out this or that show was written by a legitimate monster or was acted by a legitimate monster. You know, some people find out that Tom Cruise throws baby tantrums when he doesn't get his way. Okay, rich people probably do that. My point is, I'm not looking at any of this stuff and then I'm judging it as harshly as something in reality that's part of my life or that's in my world. So like the more controversial parts of the She-Ra cartoon, I'm not going to attack those things. I remember I was in tears towards the end of that show. It was just so well written and the characters were so great. They fleshed everything out so well, and it was just such a wonderful, it was an incredibly good cartoon. There are not really many things out there have gone to that degree. Now when you first start watching it, right, you're a grown-up like me. I'm almost 50 years old. I watched She-Ra. I had the toys, even though I was a boy. I mostly had He-Man toys. I liked it. It was great because it was a continuation of that storyline and the artwork and everything. But I'm not, I'm not ready for such a drastic, complete, overhaul. And so, of course, when you first start watching it, you're like, this isn't She-Ra. Just plain and simple. This is not She-Ra. It's cartoony and dopey and silly and comedy and stupid, even stupider than the original She-Ra, right? But then you really get into it. By the time they had the Pegasus unicorn talking, I was losing it. I laughed so hard through most of that show, and I fell. It's the ugly chick that you meet that you fall in love with, then you're bros, right? It's just like that She-Ra. So when I'm making this stuff, I'm not thinking about the absolute terrible resolve from finding out this or that person was the devil or that they're, for me, it's toys that I am playing with, and I get to make my own toys and I get to create them. So I made a guild of actors, and I have all varieties of sizes of actors. I have tall, short, muscular, chubby, girl, boy, as many different kinds I can. And so I took one of those characters and then made this. Okay, so she looks pretty good, I think. So here's Angela, the mom from Cast a Spell, or from, is that her name? Goodness, Glimmer's mom. Okay, she's got the wings and the outfit and everything. Okay, so, and I tried to keep that Sega Genesis aesthetic, but also have my own art in it, and I love pixel artwork, and so this might not look great to someone thinking, oh, that's pixel art, but it looks crap, whatever. When you see this on a Sega Genesis, it really looks great. You learn what you're doing and how to separate things. Bo, he was a great character. I don't know why it's opening in the... I guess I've got maybe PNGs or something set up to open in the Windows viewer. So I think that's a great Bo character there from the Netflix cartoon. And this is a 16 color character. There's no reason why this won't immediately translate to Sega Genesis. Alright. Let's see. Cast a Spell. Now here we go. Here's the first. I haven't turned her into Cast a Spell yet. So this is an actor character. That's, she came to work wearing plain clothes. But I do have Catra. Catra, who I would argue is one of the most important characters in the cartoon. Definitely the most transformative character. She really goes through a complete character arc. And you can see lots of great, like angle. She is Catra. I think it looks exactly like her. And I, of course, I did a screen grab from the cartoon and looked at the characters and tried to make you know, as good of an interpretation of it as I could. And on the Sega Genesis, that's going to look completely amazing. Everyone's most favorite silly cake-loving character with living hair. Amazing character. The way they made her was a lot of these, because they added so much more complexity, emotional complexity. There's who will become Frosta. Again, just an actor. Like, let's make some characters that can be, you know, used for anybody we want. Okay, lots of characters. Here we have who might end up being Glimmer. And I'll change them. I'll change their arms and legs and stuff to fit it. I did this, you know, they're like paper doll cutouts, right? So, redrawing all these characters and stuff, like I did, I was working on a Altered Beast and, you know, Batman. So in Batman, I'll have pictures here. This was back when Affleck was first about to become Batman. People were coming up with ideas of what he might look like. So I'll just get a screen grab, you know, of Batman, and then I'll use that to take one of my actor characters and just redraw that character to be Batman. You know, so that's one way to approach creating your pixel artwork. Now with my wrestlers here, the next step is to make some components. So this is the fun part, is getting to draw this. Now, if you think about a game on the Atari, some of the more first fruits of the Atari, this isn't really how those games really were approached. Now, granted, sometimes they had a graphics designer, they had a music programmer, they had maybe a coder that put it all together. Usually, though, they had one programmer, and they might have concept, they might have an original work to base the video game off of, like with Pac-Man or most of the original games, Space Invaders, Frogger, all that stuff. But when you think of an Atari game, you don't generally think that a graphics designer came up with advanced, colorful graphics for this game. So when you think of Asteroids, you're not thinking of how amazing the graphics are for the ship. Okay, it's just it's a you know, mouse pointer on the screen that spins around and shoots a little tiny dot and then big blobs. I'm sure more art, focus, and attention probably went into the patterns of Asteroids than the ship itself. And it's not a feat of, you know, of art, you know, as far as, you know, drawings and things. And that's fine. It looks great. I love it. It's wonderful the way that it is. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. But you don't look at it and go, wow, they had, you know, Rembrandt working on the graphics for this game. Frogger. The Frogger arcade game had a lot more color than the Atari 2600, and then that's how all of them were. So as far as drawing these games goes, you know, and having a focus on art is both, it's both good and bad. The Atari 2600 is not known for having really great, you know, artistic feats. So not that there aren't games on the system that are really great artistically. Let's think of some games for the Atari 2600 that really push it to where it's like, how did they do these graphics? I can think of a few. Let's see, Q to S, T, let's go. Tapper. Now, when I look at this, let's see, we've got 4 rows, but we also have, see the characters moving back and forth? So this was done masterfully. Whoever did this not only embraced the limitations of the system, but they created their own way to get around those limitations. And you can see it. I don't like that it's Mountain Dew. It needs to be beer. Look at that. Look at the artwork. That's like Sprite artwork. So you get the, now, but then you look at the server, the bartender guy, and he's following the Atari lines of color rule, where the hair can't go down on the head. The hair's one color and it's straight lines. The head's one color and it's straight lines. The body, the shirt is one color and it's straight lines. The pants are one color, straight lines. Feet, the boots are one color and straight lines. The tables are all one color and straight lines. The one color straight line rule is in effect here. Things that kind of go past that rule are on this screen. You get the bandit, he's like sprites. You get the bartender, there he is, that's you, and he's like sprites, like Sprite artwork. That's great. You get the beer mugs. No one drinks Mountain Dew out of a giant mug like that, by the way. And they're all like sprites. You get the outline color, and then they're flashing and filling up with beer. So this is, in my opinion, an artistic feat for the 2600. Of course, what would I see? What would I want to see that's better? The single color graphics could be made into 3 color sprites with one more layer over each of the characters. But it would make the game, I guess, kind of like a, you know, a half framework, like 30 frames a second. You'd get some shimmering probably, or you'd have to change the colors. And this is from, you know, the 80s. I think 83. I don't think 83 is when this specific game came out. I think maybe the original game. Okay, now I remember my mom playing Tapper in a bar. When we were kids, my mom worked in a bar during the day, and she at first and often couldn't afford babysitters. So the bar owner, it was a place called Big George's Bar, would just let me and my brother sit there and eat pretzels while my mom cleaned tables and served people. It wasn't to the point where rambunctious, rowdy, adult stuff was going on because it was daytime. So people would come in there and sit at a table and eat, you know, eat a sandwich and stuff. It was a calmer environment. And it didn't happen a lot. You know, it wasn't like me and my brother were going to this bar and just hanging out every day. It was quite a few times, though. But my mom would play Tapper there, and it was the original Budweiser Tapper. The game that they had to stop making because there were not laws established about whether a video game could have an alcohol, you know, beverage as the, you know, theme. So in the arcade world, it was transformed into Root Beer Tapper, and then in this particular case, it was then turned into Mountain Dew Tapper. So these people are all NASCAR aficionados, and they're getting their dew on, and I guess it would make more sense. That's why they're sliding you down the table, because these are, you know, rednecks. Normal patrons in a bar would likely not do that, so the Mountain Dew thing answers for that. But in my opinion, this should just be beer. And if I was going to change it, that's what it'd be. Okay, so let's see another artistic feat for the 2600. Okay. Now, some of the, oh, here we go. Now, this is a Homebrew artistic feat. Someone made this much later, you know, and this is a new Millennium game, probably, I'm guessing 2010-ish or somewhere before after that. And this is if someone were to actually use the bank switching 8 kilobyte, you know, capabilities. And what we have here is the rebellious student Pac-Man who eats his pencils, and the teacher puts on a ghost costume and is chasing you down. You're not allowed to eat pencils. This is such a great Pac-Man game that it just stands on its own. It's so very, very good. And it puts in under that microscope, what if? This is what we could have had in the early 80s if Atari said, no, Pac-Man is way too popular, it's our most important game, we're going 8K. We're going to use the newfangled bank switching techniques, and we want this game to look like the arcade game as much as is possible. This is what we would have gotten. Okay? And it is fun, and the sound effects are perfect. The gameplay is perfect. Well, let's do it. If you bought this for your 2600 in the early 80s, people would have thought you had the arcade machine in your bedroom. For real. That would have been like, does that guy spend $1,000 and get Pac-Man for his bedroom? Oh, and it would be the red guy that ate me. So yeah, that's really, really great. Now that's a homebrew though, so it's one of those hindsight being 2020. We can do this now, so we're going to do it. Another one's Donkey Kong. This is a homebrew, 2013. Andreas Dietrich. And he uses the method that I, found out by accident, but he's doing it with assembly and to a, much greater degree. I'm looking for something here. Not finding it either. There we go. I just burned my biscuits. I'm playing this with a keyboard because all this is next to the camera. So for a couple of days now, for 2 days, I've been playing music with my son. And I plan on doing an In Bed with Guitars video about the experience that I've had over the past couple of days, 3 days now actually, counting today. What it's like to see somebody wake up musically. It's really, really, especially when they're 10. Okay, so that looks just like Donkey Kong. What's the setback? It scrolls, you don't get the entire screen. This was the thing he was stuck with. Really no way around it, okay? This was a good feat of graphics back in the day. Was Buck Rogers for the 2600. Now, a lot of these games had 8-bit computer versions, eventually Intellivision or ColecoVision versions of the game. Here you can see that the ship is actually two halves that are lined up. You get a scrolling background, you got obstacles. I'm controlling the speed of the ship. I can't shoot and do this at the same time. The scrolling effects are really cool. There's how shooting is. Really great video game. This is what everyone got, and people We're like, that's not Pac-Man. This was my favorite Pac-Man, though. As a little kid, I would have rather played this than the arcade game because I could actually play this. I could sit there, you know, drinking root beer or whatever and just play this. It wasn't a big deal. Now, see how the mouth opens and closes like kind of in a weird way. I like the sound effects. I like everything about this game. No, it's not the arcade Pac-Man. Yes, it is obviously Pac-Man. So, it's Pac-Man on its side. Now, what do I like better than this one over the 8K version? Well, the graphics are less pencil-y. The things you're eating, even though I guess they look kind of like pencils, they don't look as much like pencils to where the first thing I'm thinking is, hey, I'm eating pencils. Like I'm eating 1,000 pencils today. They look like little wafers or something, like a wafer-thin wafer. Pac-Man's going to explode. Okay, now we've all seen this. And with Stella, you can go in there and say, hey, what if I actually make this guy look like Pac-Man? And that's what I did. I just redrew his mouth to make him look slightly more like the arcade version of Pac-Man. So art is a thing. Even though this is the Atari 2600, we're looking at very simplistic representations of our favorite games. So, some other really great ones. Let's look at Pete Rose Baseball. Okay, look at the graphics in this game. Here we can see a really great use of the, you know, everything is one row of colors effect. It's really harder to immediately notice that everything is these straight lines of colors. There are no sprites here. The sprites didn't exist when this happened. This was, you know, a straight line of color and then another straight line of color. Nothing is overlapping, but it's well animated. The pitch is several frames of animation. See, his foot's up, his knee's up, his hand's up, he's throwing the ball, his foot's down. I don't know, has this got me, yeah, okay, so it started me out playing this. No, I can't even spin it, I can't swing the bat, I don't even know how to, okay. Looks great, right? So some Atari games actually do look really good, even though they're stuck in that like line drawing nightmare of graphics. No one knew what they were doing at the time. So now a game that was remade by fans to fix its horrific problems was Xenophobe. Okay, this game, here's the game that they sold you. Now, look at the character, look at the bad guys. Look at the backgrounds. It's purple graphics. You got Star Trek colors, cute. Look at that, that's supposed to be a Xenophobe. I don't know who came up with the blue color for what was obviously dark green characters. The artwork, like that looks like a dog. It doesn't look like the little tentacle monster bad guys. The backgrounds are bumped, like purple. Who picked purple for the color for this? Look at that. You can barely see. You can barely see that. The tentacles coming out, and they're blue. None of this is right. Now, I hope that, you know, whoever made this isn't watching this and losing it, but seriously, who was like, hey, I drew the tentacles, here they are. Oh, that looks great, let's keep that. That must have been a conversation that happened, and then both of those people went right back to, you know, drinking themselves to death or eating mushrooms. I don't know what someone did that made them think that was xenophobe or it looked anything like it. So someone fixed it, okay? Now I don't know where it is. There it is. Here it is. Xenophobe arcade. There we go. And this, what they did was they made all of these different versions of characters. Okay. I don't know which one to pick. Quack looks like a duck though. Let's pick him first. Now this is the redrawn xenophobe. And we can see how much just a change of, look at that. Your character is a duck face. He's got a beak. Okay, green with visible tentacles. Okay, see them? You can see the little tentacles coming up. It's shaded. That's the xenophobes. They're shaded and they're green. A massive improvement. The backgrounds are shaded. They have a level of dark, next level up, and then bright. It's gray. It looks like you're in some kind of ship or something. It really does. Like someone made metal space bulkhead kind of things. That looks like the tentacles. Exactly like them. It's got the red tentacle part sticking out, right? Okay. This is an excellent video game. And it's mainly just because of the effort of some editor, kind of modern homebrewer nerdy guys, getting in there and redrawing and recoloring the artwork. This is a fun game. I've played a lot of this. Now the other characters, they have a guy that looks kind of like, see if I can find him. No, he's a bug. He's a bug guy. He's got like tentacle things on his head. If you ever played this for the Lynx or the arcade game, it had a girl, it had some alien looking guys. Here we go. He's just a kind of a, he's a red shirt. Okay, he's like he can't seem to get that guy off his butt there. He looks pretty cool. Let's see if I can find the no, he's another alien guy. Okay, Dr. Zoriers. I think this is him. Nope. Maybe, I don't know what's going on here. It must be this first guy. He looks like Steve Zissou. There we go. We have Steve Z as a playable character here. This is a very, very good video game. And we'll just run through this real quick of how far I've gotten in this game. Anybody following around? Okay, so we've got a couple of wrestlers. Now, I noticed in the video, the guy on the right looks a lot darker. But what I'm seeing is a dark green. Maybe if I zoom in, it'll be easier to see. He has a dark green shirt. So really, does this look like it has, you know, broken the confines of the Atari curse of line colors? Maybe. But does it really look better than any other Atari game? I'd say that no, there are some Atari games that do probably look slightly better. But this is modern, and I'm going for these graphics that will, I want people to say, wow, that's Atari. I want to say, that's a 2600. I didn't know 2600 could do that. Stuff like that. That's what I'm going for here. But yeah, on the note that I was speaking of earlier on music, my son, he loves Doom, which is like his favorite thing ever. And the music he really likes. He listens to Doom music recreationally, just for fun, you know. And there was one of the songs he was listening to, and I heard it, and it was dun 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 dun. And I went, Nick, that's a song by Alice in Chains. I just said straight up, that's I think I called it Bag of Bones or something like that. I called it, I didn't know, I guess it's called like Them Bones or something. I don't know. It is that song. Whether, I'm sure they probably got permission because it is that song. It's not like they made it kind of sound like it a little bit. It is the exact same song. Okay, so, and he plays it a lot. He was playing it a lot, and so I played the, Alice in Chains song for him so he could hear it, and it just like blew his mind that it was absolutely exactly the same. Fast forward a few days, right? A few days later, maybe a week later, we're outside because it's cooler, it's not super hot. We're just kind of walking around the yard. I'm checking stuff out around the house and stuff. And then I think I was having like some glitchiness in one of my security cameras, so I unplugged and checked them. I found some corrosion, cleaned it off, rehooked up my cameras. Then I went inside to check the cameras to see if it made any difference. Then I noticed my acoustic guitar, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my acoustic guitar outside with me, just for fun. Because I do that sometimes. I'll sit out on my porch and play. Although this year the mosquitoes have been so bad that you really can't even go outside for a couple of minutes without being bitten several times by mosquitoes. So I take the acoustic out, I sit down, and I start playing some songs, right? And then it just dawned on me, go ahead and play that. So he watched me figure that song out in less than 30 seconds. Like in no time at all, I was playing that song the Doom way that it was played. I think there's a slight variance in the bridge in the Alice in Chains version of it. And then I said, okay, do you want to play that? Now usually he'll play a repeating pattern of one finger like on the A chord. So he'll start with the A chord and he'll just go up a fret and then up another fret, then down to that same to the fret from before, then back to the A. And it's just a repeating pattern. It gets him strumming and it gets him playing it. He's 10. He's still learning, he's still learning everything about guitar. And I try to get him to learn power chords because they're a really universal way to pick up, especially if you like rock songs from the 80s or just, rock music and heavy metal and all those genres. Power chords are chords that use anywhere from 2 to 4 or more strings in the same hand shape. And so they can be moved anywhere on the fretboard. You can move them pretty much anywhere and get sounds that work well together. So I showed him the 2-finger version of the power chord to be able to learn it. And in just a few minutes, he was starting to learn the first part of the song. Over 3 days, he has been playing it on everything. He played it on his mom's, what's it called? It's a Kona or something. It's like a rubber stringed miniature bass. He was playing it on that. He played it on my Bronco bass. He played it on an acoustic bass. He played it on my Sawtooth electric guitar, my custom Strat electric guitar. He played it on my Glary electric guitar. He played it on both my acoustic guitars. I have an Ibanez acoustic guitar. I have another one that I worked on in videos. So he's just playing it. And he played it on his own electric guitar. That's like a one that I set up for him and kind of customized. It's like a Ibanez knockoff from, I think Iran is the company, but it's exactly the same company and guitars that are Glary guitars or any of those. any of those cheap knockoff guitars that are $100 or less, they all come from the same company, they all look the same, and they just have a different branding on the headstock. This is one of those. And I had taken it apart and spray painted the body back when I was giving it to my first son to try to get him into guitar, which he never got into guitar at all. So I ended up, just taking the guitar back and saving it. When my second son actually showed interest in guitar, I gave it to him and he actually played it. But I did a lot of work to it. I put CV Getty Black Skull with red eye tuners, custom skull with ruby-eyed volume and tone knobs. I put Schecter Guitar Research pickups in it, and a really nice middle pickup. I think it's a Dragonfire or something. It's all totally customized. I set up the guitar, level crown polish, took care of the neck and everything, and the guitar played great though to begin with. In all honesty, right out of the box, tune up and play, the guitar played very, very well. But the changes I made make it play very, very, very well. So it's actually a super fun guitar to play. He's got a little amp with tuning and effects and drum machine and all that stuff. And it can play off batteries. You can take it outside, take it anywhere. He had a drum set, but we had to clear out room in his bedroom. He hadn't been playing his drums very much. But he played drums the other day. So I'm thinking the next episode of In Bed with Guitars will be Nick playing this song that he's learning to play. Maybe. I think he'd like that. And okay. Now back to the subject at hand. I have to come up with frames that I can use several times. There are going to be some frames that can only be used for what they are. So a punch and a kick can only be used for punching and kicking, but maybe we'll have a lariat kind of clothesline move. That's very important in wrestling. I have a feeling that I'm going to run out of room really, really fast with this, and it's going to be a real creative effort trying to get as many uses out of a handful of frames as possible. I also considered that something I definitely want to do is right after I'm finished with this game, I want to do girl characters and just make a second version of the game that's all girls. I really think that would be a great idea. Because girl wrestling is a big deal. So this is the one that's been up there. And if you look at it, the pink and white, I haven't achieved that exact same color balance yet in the game. So I think I'll try to do that to see if I can actually make that character. Because what I ended up making was the guy with, looks like he's got kind of a thin beard and bald head, but otherwise looks exactly the same. Just some minor changes. So artwork, that's the big deal now. Here's an example of what I was talking about before. The actors, right? So these are like actors that I came up with to source for any characters that I might want to make for the Sega Genesis. So I just, drew these characters one day and thought, kind of an archetype. So I've got me. Of course, I'm right here. That's me. Okay, got my hoodie and my sweats on and everything. This is me before everything went gray and hair started falling out and I started gaining weight and stuff like that. Don't let anybody tell you that you'll deteriorate or lose weight rapidly when you become a vegan. I actually lost weight, but then I gained it back, because you'll find out that everything that you're doing tastes better than anything ever tasted before. You're not eating like greasy, bloody, wormy, shitty meat and stuff. And so, like, okay, I would compare it to starving yourself for a couple of days, right? And then smelling food and then tasting food again after several days. The taste is, everything tastes better. Everything tastes like times 5, right? That's how it is most of the time as a vegan. You're just like, everything tastes so freaking good all the time. And so like vegan cheese that they have now, it tastes incredible. I can eat vegan cheese right out of the bag now. It wasn't so 10 years ago. They didn't have such great cheese. The butter tastes exactly like butter. The everything that, in fact, everything I've eaten. Okay, Nick had a friend come over the other day that's not vegan, and he went ahead and stayed for dinner, and we had vegan chick patty sandwiches with cheese and with whatever ketchup, mustard, stuff like that. He ate it, and the first thing he said was, "That's super good." He goes, "This is vegan." He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "It tastes absolutely exactly the same as a chicken sandwich." So you got your little kid telling you straight up, "This tastes exactly the same as a chicken sandwich," and that's really, that's the way I feel about it too, for the most part. Like the Morningstar stuff and all the boxed nuggets that you're going to get. Most little kids, and probably most people too, they're either going to think it tastes better or they're not going to be able to tell the difference at all. Where if you didn't tell them. In fact, you saw one of the biggest vegan hater, butt munches in the world that's like a TV personality pull this huge argument about veganism, vegan burgers, all this other crap, right? And they tested him, they gave him burgers, and he actually got it wrong. He was like eating an Impossible burger made with like the Impossible patties that we all use and love, right? And he goes, "Oh, now I know that's beef. I know that's real ground beef." He raised like all manner of BS about it. Like this, you can tell it's got the flavor. Nothing beats. And he filled it in, like he just blew it out. Like this, nothing beats the flavor of actual real beef burger. And this is like juicy. This is perfectly cooked, and like this is one of the best tasting. He just laid it down thick, right? That was the vegan burger, right? So that's really where they're at with it. Not to jump on a soapbox too high with this, but so I turned everyone into a ninja. There you go. I just drew everyone as if they were part of some ninja clan in their own hometown there, just for fun, right? And you can turn all your characters into anybody that you want. So you can see their pixel art characters. Now, the arms I made intentionally kind of long to fit costumes in case I want to draw a costume that needs to fill in this gap in between the arms. But one of the first things I do if I'm going to use these characters for anything is I shrink up their arms a little bit and close them in if they're going to be, visible. And like with this guy, you can see that it's been shrunken in a little bit because he has a jacket on. I found the place where the clothes are going to level out, and so it's more like I said, it's like paper dolls to me. They're like dolls or toys or something. Now you can see I have kind of a mild anime influence here. So thinking of the hardest moves to depict, well, if you've kept up with this, the problem that I ran into was the width of the sprites. Okay, if this was just a game where you have an 8 pixel wide character and they're, whatever, floating, running, walking along, and then maybe they're shooting a bullet or a laser blast or throwing a ball or something, that's easy because your sprite is easily confinable to that 8 pixel wide limit. If you don't care if your sprite looks really blocky and chunky, then you can go for some hardware kind of pixel doubling or quadrupling that the Atari can do for free, right? But in the case of the wrestlers, I'm thinking, how do I get these wrestlers to look right and be wide? The first thing I'm thinking is use the pixel doubling or quadrupling. So I came up with some ideas here, and I want to talk about them before I came to the conclusion that I'm going to stick with. So first we're going to just talk about the different ways that this can be done. Okay, so we have the wrestler squatting. He's bending down onto his feet. This can be that he's getting up from being knocked down. It can be that he's jumping up in the air. He's jumping off of a rope. It could be a knee pin, I guess. It could be that he's dropping down to do a snapmare or to throw the character. So there are multiple uses just for this frame, and so that's useful. Now, suppose he jumps up in the air. This is his jump frame, and then he's going to do a drop kick, right? And so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be difficult. I need to come up with different drop kick modes, right? So I came up with this first one, and this is 8x8, and you know, he's not going to look like this, is he? Right? Like, oh God, that's terrible. It doesn't look like him, but it's meant to be scaled. So actually, here's what it would end up looking like, double scaled, like that. Now, in Atari land, sure, why not? That's okay, right? But we're going for really good-looking sprites, right? So this is kind of, you know, how do I make this work and look good when it looks like that? So then I put that back and thought, okay, what about a second way to do this? And here's what I came up with. I could double it, one of the frames, but then on the first frame add an 8-pixel wide higher resolution layer. And that's what I get there with the face and the muscles and stuff. But even still, the trunks and the boots and legs look terrible. It just looks terrible. Now granted, this is going to be a quickly seen one frame. Doesn't matter so much, right? And that's actually composed of a couple of frames. This is the front frame. And so then we also have the second frame here. This will be the legs. And then with these legs, hardware doubled, not tripled. So I'll show what that looks like. Scaled to 16. Like that. With that first one that's 8 pixels wide put on the front of it. Then we end up with something that looks like this. Right? And that's closer. Now we're getting closer to something that maybe is acceptable for a dropkick. And I'm not saying this is totally ruled out, but I did come up with a better idea. And what I'm going to do, and I haven't drawn it yet. So let's look at the grappling mode here. I think that looks great. This could be body slam, suplex, grapple. I guess it could be clothesline if it's combined with movement. And we've got a punch frame, and I thought maybe I would put one of the feet out for the punch frame, but I don't know. I rather would probably have this be in motion for the punch. So what I'm going to do, okay, and this is what made me realize it. Let's see. Let's look at an example. If I can find it real quick, we'll look at. We'll go ahead and open Fusion. This is a Sega Genesis emulator by Steve Snake. Maybe he's related to my snake Reuben. Let's see. Wrestle War. Okay, now this was based on an arcade game, if I remember correctly. I think I played this arcade game as a kid. And this was what gave me the little light bulb above my head, exclamation point, about how to handle this situation. Not entirely exactly in this way, but it gave me the idea of how to handle it. Now, perspective. If these wrestlers were simply side by side facing each other, there'd be a lot more of these longer, wider sprites, like with his suplex motion, right? Okay, but because in the game we're looking at the wrestlers facing each other, coming at each other from angles, from the bottom of the ring, side of the ring and stuff, we actually have some thinner sprites where they could be wider. For instance, if he's beneath the other wrestler visually, you know, kind of in the foreground, and he's punching. Here we go, see? Now that is a smaller sprite width-wise than if they were facing each other doing the same action. Okay? So that's how I'm going to approach many of the moves in my game. Rather than have the character do a drop kick that causes them to plank lengthwise because of how ugly that would be and how, you know, it just, you know, wouldn't work well. It'd be cheap because I could do a small 8-pixel 8x8 and then just lengthen it, but you'd lose all the details. All the cool little details that are making the game look good would be gone. So what I'm going to do is have the character jump, so the squat animation, then their feet are going to come outwards towards you to do the drop kick. Okay, so it will not require that really long planking motion, and it should still look like a drop kick. It'll knock the other character down, you know, in the same way, right? And my wrestling game might be one of, if not the only wrestling games that handles it this way. So we're going to have a lot of that too. I'm going to try to use that method where it gets a little more dimensional. And, you know, so someone watching it may not even know that it's kind of a necessity for me to do that. They'll just think, wow, what a cool way to do a drop kick, that the guy's jumping and kicking towards you, towards the viewer, rather than side to side. But then maybe someone that watched my videos or knows the limitations is thinking, wow, he didn't have to make a 16 or 32 pixel wide sprite for that to work. You know, they'll see the creativity behind it. So that's what's next. Now, also, because we're talking about recycling images, like that right there could end up being the clothesline and the punch and the suplex posture. So I could get several uses out of that same frame if I make him in that look where his feet are sticking out, right, and you know, he's angled that way. I guess that could also be used for him laying on the mat if it's done right. It could be used for the beginning of him rolling side to side. It could be those handful of frames. And get used even more. So I did that in Yeet Fighter. In Yeet Fighter, the same frame for the character jumping just straight up in the air is also the same as squatting. The low kick is the same as the jump kick. You know, using as many different, getting as many different uses out of the same frames made it so I could have more moves. And in this case, it might make it so I can have more complexity to the game by getting as much use out of a frame as possible. And then if you think about it, the body's shape when doing that drop kick is essentially the same as the body's shape when laying on the mat. It could be how the character is pinned. It could be the place where they're knocked down and are about to get back up. And it can also be the drop kick. Could be a drop kick off the top rope. Lots of stuff like that. So I have to milk it for all it's worth. So I've started making some of the frames of animation that I'll be using in this game for moves and for effects. What I was talking about the drop kick, I've went ahead and drawn what I'm going to use. So this is the first look at the drop kick. And so it will be a jump, and then that's going to happen high up to be the drop kick. Now this could also be used for the character falling or even getting up from a pin or something like that, the frame of animation. Also, I've got the pinning frame drawn where the character will be pinning the opponent. I've got what the wrestler looks like when they're pinned, and of course that can be the same as them getting knocked down. That's totally fine. We've got him slumped over. This could be the head being driven into the turnbuckle. This could be getting hit with an elbow or a knee from above. It could be getting punched or slapped. It could be getting in a headlock or prepared for a suplex or a pile driver. So this frame could actually have lots of different uses. We have a splash. This could be the character jumping off the rope, you know, flying up at the other wrestler. And the one I showed earlier, which is them squatting down. This could be them getting back up. This could be them jumping. This could be them doing a knee attack off the ropes, just a jumping knee. The frame before the drop kick. It can have several uses. So I'm beginning with this. So for the drop kick, let's see if I can get this to work here. We'll go to photo viewer. It could go from here, then to here. And it's got his feet popped out and his arms up. So a lot of reusing of frames. Now, this is a lot of frames though, but I have to be really careful and creative. Probably said this about a dozen times now, about how to reuse as many of these frames as possible. So, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I've been in contact with another programmer, and we've been swapping ideas back and forth about how to do things. He said I inspired him to code with Visual Atari Basic, and he's making some games. And we're both, you know, tossing stuff at publishers and Atari and just going through that to see what we can get done. And he posed the question about variables. He said, I've completely run out of variables. How do you even do anything when you're stuck with A to Z for your variables? And if you think about it, first, it is kind of no big deal. You're like, oh, well, I'm just using this variable for this. But then eventually you realize you just ran out completely of variables, and 26 variables is really not much. So the method that I use for grabbing a number from a joystick direction, and this came from knowing that in Yeet Fighter I needed to have diagonals and have lots of timing for several different directions to get these special moves to happen, like a quarter circle forward or a quarter circle backwards, or half circle moves, things like that, that I really needed to be able to capture the directions in a way that would allow me to do special moves. Now, then I realized, well, with this game, and this was one of the suggestions that I made to him for his game, was that rather than have a variable for each direction, have a kind of a counter timer variable, and then go ahead and just use that specific direction in the code. And what this does is it makes it to where you're not just dealing with variables, you're dealing with actual directions of the joystick. And so what this should do is, for each joystick, free up 3 variables, which would end up being 6 variables freed up, which is a lot. It's enough. It's probably enough in my particular case to solve any problems that I might be having with the variables. So I used up everything, creating the variables for the player colors to combine with the player animations, because you have to be able to use one or the other. For instance, I could probably try to come up with one variable that accounts for every possible combination of wrestlers, but what I would rather do to keep the playfield open is have a specific variable for the color of each of the wrestlers, to make as many different customized wrestlers based on color and design, and then have a different variable that is the actual design of the wrestler. I think that still needs to be separate. So that's 4 variables right there. But then, as I said, for each of the controllers, up, down, left, and right has their own variable. And what that does is, in code, is makes it so that at any time you can just address what that variable is doing. And having the timing of the variable open, an open playfield for that timing of the variable is very useful. You can say that anything on the screen then responds to whatever variables and whatever number they're at, what they're doing. And so in this particular case, rather than have it address that specific variable or a combination of variables, I have to address the actual joystick direction. And it's really no big deal. In fact, it can be less memory intensive doing this. So when you're actually just calling out for a joystick direction and one timer, that's going to be less than several variables that are all reacting to it. And I also need variables for the moves. And so this will, again, free up 6 variables. So I've got my code here for my controls. And if you look and see, we have if joy 0 left, here we've got if joy 0 left and right, and down and up and fire. We've also got joy 1 left, right, down, up, and fire, and all of them have their own variables. So what I'm going to do is add an AND to each one, and then specify, just choose one variable, and then specify a time for it, and then that's actually going to free up a couple of chunks of code there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then when I'm done I'll get back to it and show the changes that I made. And then we'll sweep down and relate those changes to the movement and animation of the characters. Okay, so now I've went ahead and rewritten the code. On the right is the saved notepad work. On the left we have the rewritten code. And what this does is changes the way the joystick is interpreted slightly, but it also frees up 6 variables. So where we had variables E, S, N, Q, Z, and Y, all reserved for different directions, now what we've done is, rather than use the variables in conjunction with the directions, we're just using the joystick direction. Now all the other data from how the joystick works should be the same, because we're now looking at the actual direction, but the rest of it, the animation variable and the x-axis variables, are still the same. So this changes very little as far as the sprites and how they move and all that. It really just simply changes how the joystick is interpreted. So we can see that right around here, joystick left, instead of being joystick left is W, joystick right is E, joystick down is S, joystick up is N, giving individual variables for every direction, we have joy left or joy right, joy down or joy up, which is what I've replaced it with here and here. So then I'm leaving the fire button to have its own variable on both. And the same thing goes for the second player or joy 1. So really I've just taken the first variable that was originally for pressing right, or left, pressing left on the joystick, and I've just made it the variable to account for any directional presses. Now this might affect how things work. Because it could add too much movement if up and right or up and left are pressed. So I might need to add some code that eliminates that. So that if during movement phase for the character, if diagonals are pressed, it doesn't dramatically speed up the character. Okay, so or maybe I could leave it that way if that's an effect that I want. So again, this frees up 6 variables that are desperately needed when making this, this video game. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and try it out as it is. I've already tested the compilation. Now let's see. Here we go. There we go. And it actually, it looks like I made the directions for the right side player backwards. So that's the first thing I'll need to change. But it does work. It works exactly the same. Only it frees up those extra variables. Okay, so I'm running through these moves, and I'm going to go ahead and go over the process by which I create sprites again, in case this is someone's first foray into this method. I've got one drawing that I've done that will be two single color sprites layered that will create a third color. So this is the wrestler pinning the other wrestler, and so I'm going to erase. I've got the move called wrestler pin, and then I've got wrestler pin A and wrestler pin B. Wrestler pin B will be only the hair color and the outline color. So I'll be getting rid of the flesh tone color for this particular sprite. So this is all that will be the single color. Okay, I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to open A and get rid of the hair. And now I have my two different unique that will be single color sprites. So to do the next one, let's go to pinned. This is when he's been knocked down or he's getting ready to be pinned. So I'll save it as A. Then I'll save it as B. These will be single colored sprites. I will pick the background color. Now I'll erase the single color for flesh tone that will also combine to create the outline color. And now I'll open A and get rid of the accent color, the hair and the trunks and the boots. Okay, so then I end up with these two, A and B. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that with the Body Slam Gorilla Press here. Save as. And you know, you can name them whatever you want, but you're going to be taking your three colored sprite and then making two single colored sprites that will be layered to create a third color. It's just a kind of a little magic that, as far as I know, only the 2600 can do because of the way it handles like the luminescence, the luminance, whatever, the depth of color as it's viewed. There's a bit of translucency to 2600 player graphics. Alright, translucence. So now we have those two. Press A and press B. So here's the original. And that's going to be created by combining this one and this one. Anywhere where they're both combined, you'll get the outline color, which is a combination of two. And anywhere where there's empty spots, those will be those specific colors. So you can make them any color you want. Now we have the punch. Also might be used for a clothesline or grappling. It's not difficult when you figure it out. So there we go. I'll be dropping those into the game very soon.